Kristan.
It's happening.
We are live. Okay, let me do a quick little intro for anyone who is watching this afterwards or might even pop on. So you and I are coming together because we are going to do a shadow workshop together. And your friend Kate joined. Yay. All right. And Jamie. Okay, let's go. So we are getting into the work of the shadow. And you are, of the two here, me and you are the expert. Kristan Sargeant. I am Laurie Gunning Grossman for anyone watching. And we wanted to do a quick chat before we come together this Thursday, May 14th. We are doing a workshop on the shadow. And one thing I want to say really quickly, Kristan, before you start talking a little bit about the shadow and why this is something interesting to work on. Because you and I, we were laughing about this because I said it was reminding me of this movie with Jennifer Aniston and Vince Vaughn. And in the movie, they're fighting. And she's like, I want you to want to do the dishes. And he's like, why would I want to do the dishes? And this keeps popping up in my mind where I'm like, why would I want to do work around the shadow? So why would we want to do work around the shadow? Go.
Such a good question. And you know, for anybody from my world who's on our live with us, which is so cool. This is our first Substack live, both of us. And so thank you people for being here. How cool is this? It works. You know, so for my people who don't know you, you're all about the light. So what is such a cool opportunity for me is to get to be in conversation. I talk about the shadow all the time, but I just love you bringing that point of view. Like, first of all, why would I want to do the dishes? Which in this context is, why would I want to go into pain and dark and hard and and how does it relate to the light? And so, you know, my Substack, which is the world we're in right now, is called The Big Reveal. And it's the working title of the book I'm working on about the shadow. And the reason I named it The Big Reveal is that the big reveal is that, you know, the shadow contains the light. And if we want to stream light, express light, which I think everybody I know not only wants to feel light, but wants to bring light. We feel best as human beings when we are streaming light and in outflow, giving light. And shadows, another big reveal is everybody has shadow. There's no way to be human and be here without having some dark. It's also like part of our deepest humanity. Like, we don't want to not have shadow, because shadow is what makes me interested in you, Laurie. Like, I can feel without knowing you the texture of all the things you've been through and the life experience you have. That's all shadow. And when we get to know, so everybody has shadow, that's big reveal number one. But big reveal number two is that light comes through that shadow, the most brilliant light, our most expansive light. And big reveal number three is, like, it's not actually that painful or hard to get in touch with that part of ourselves. It's actually joyful.
This is what I love talking to you about this, Kristan, is that you bring you bring a lightness to talking about the darkness, talking about the shadow. I don't know if you would call it darkness, but talking about the shadow. Like, when I talk to you about it, and this is why we want to do this workshop together, you bring such a joy and passion around it. Like, you're such a cheerleader for the shadow. And before I really started talking to you, I just didn't really see it that way. Even though I've heard throughout the years people talking about the shadow and, hey, this is part of the work we should do. But talking to you, I see the joy in it. I see the opportunities for growth and expansion in the most beautiful ways. Yes, there may be some uncomfortable moments going through, digging into it, meeting. You know, we can talk about how I met my shadow through this workshop I did with you last month. You bring such a joy to it that I was like, and listening to you talk about it, I thought to myself, oh my gosh, this is so much of the part of the work that is so helpful to so many people right now. So I love how in my mind, how you've reframed it. Like, you love the shadow.
I really do. And I want to say, because I think this was I didn't really say it in the setup, but a really, you know, additionally important point that you and I really resonated on was, if we don't take the time to get to know our shadow, it blocks the light. That's a really important point too. So, like, a lot of people are into conceptually manifesting. And, again, this idea of like streaming light, being positive. And yes, and if we don't work with the shadow, it really does create impediments to that we don't realize we're the source of those blocks. So if we're not, living in purpose and living expansively, which doesn't mean life stops being challenging, but if you don't feel like you're fully accessing that light, that joy, and that full self-expression, you've got some shadow stuff going on that, again, like my purpose in life, my raison d'etre is not only to be a cheerleader, but to it's just not that hard. Like, I think, I'm trained as a traditional talk therapist. And I think that, my take on the way I was taught was like this idea that therapy has to be like 20 years, on a couch talking about the same stuff. And shadow work, in the way that I was, blessed to get to learn it, it is so efficient and joyful. Like, it just doesn't, it's really not that hard. Like, maybe that could be a segue to, so I meet you, I mean, we've known each other for a while, but we had our shadow encounter at this workshop, and you're, I didn't know, come to find out, you're like, "Meh, meh, meh." Like, why would I want to, right?
Yeah.
And then, like, what happened? Like, what was your experience?
This was so great. So what I loved is that you walked us through, and which is something that we're going to do with our group, our workshop this Thursday. You walked us through an exercise where you gave us the opportunity, the choice, to choose to connect with either our evil shadow or our inferior shadow. Is that right?
Correct.
Yes. Yeah. And so I was like, oh, I think I want to connect with that evil shadow, because I was also like, who is that? And is she in me? And so you started walking us through this, and you asked us to connect with something that to help us access our evil shadow. And in that moment, I just started crying, because I was like, oh my God, like, I don't think that I've given myself the permission to like be really angry or just lose it, or to like that fire, because just the way that I naturally am, and also the way that I was perhaps brought up, was to be more of like a good girl, and I'm a people pleaser, and you don't access that. So anyway, but I was like, but you beautifully helped me to access her through some different prompts that you gave, which was so beautiful. And in my moment of meeting my shadow, she shows up as this like lady, this Victorian lady, and she's just staring at me, or she's just looking at me, but she's covered head to toe in black lace, and I can't see her face, and it's kind of like in a horror movie, and she's just like, just staring. And I was like, oh my God, like, what the heck is this? And then you did some more prompts and more working with us. And then suddenly she lifted her veil, and she had the most beautiful face, porcelain skin, big, beautiful eyes, so friendly and sweet. And again, through your prompts and working with us, I realized, oh my gosh, she had big sister energy, and she wasn't scary. And that was a complete surprise to me. And what I also loved hearing afterwards, and I'm not going to share what people's shadow, how it manifested, but everybody's shadow showed up in a completely different way, which was so fascinating to me. And that was just one step of the exercise of tapping into the shadow, because you have, what I'm hearing is that our shadow, my big sis, Victorian black lace lady, whom I'm now calling Catherine, is here to help me. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, what I think is so beautiful and evocative about your experience is that, we bury parts of ourselves, to stay safe and to fit in, right? So like, somewhere along the line, whether it was your family or just the culture, you learned that anger, was dangerous. And so it got buried in the unconscious. And then those things that we suppress or we bury, again, because we have to survive and we have to belong and we have to fit in, that's just a normal human experience. Whatever we disown and it gets pushed into the unconscious, it doesn't go away. Like, you're entitled to feel angry, like those human feelings, they're not, fundamentally bad or wrong, but we pick up on these messages, we bury it in the unconscious, and then a shadow, another self, like an alter ego self, forms to carry it, and it doesn't go away. So, but when, everybody's, I just love the way you talk about it, because we're all afraid to encounter that part of ourself. And the way you first saw her was very, very kind of typical, like, reflective of your fear of her, right? Like your judgment of her. She's kind of out of a horror movie. And then as soon as you stayed long enough with her without judgment, which is part of, what I walk people through, is just to stay curious about who that figure really is, because we encounter the shadow again through the lens of our perception, our judgment. Like the part of me that was angry was bad, or the part of me that's powerful is threatening, or so we tend to see the image that shows up tends to reflect that judgment. And then if you hang out long enough, you get to see who that being really is. And shadows, to your point, are not antisocial. They're not bad parts of us. They want to be expressed. They want to be made, safe within us. And then they really have a lot to offer. They do. They want us to fulfill our potential. I mean, again, if you think of it mostly just through like the lens of like wholeness, you can't really be your whole self if you've got parts of you that you are suppressing or splitting off. So even the parts that are a little bit scary, by the way, they're not going to drive. Like that's where you, as the adult, healthy, kind of ego self, you're part of the equation. Like the shadows are parts of us. And when we come into relationship with them, we are whole. They don't drive us. They don't drive behavior and decision making. They're just part of the whole. They're part of, like, I like to think of, like our cabinet, like, and you wouldn't make great decisions, and you certainly can't see all of what's possible without all the parts online. And then, so in that sense, I like to say your shadows carry the blueprint for who you could be before you buried parts of you that you decided were going to make you unsafe or not fit in or unlikable or dangerous. Excuse me. So yeah, the process, what ends up happening is that they're not threatening, they're not scary, they need love and attention. They reveal themselves to have other motives and potential and energy that we can't access until we encounter them. And it ends up, making us, giving us clarity about the life, like the unlived life we're leaving on the table. You don't have to be angry because you found that shadow. What you're going to gain is the energy of like self-assertion, probably would be my guess. That's what I watch over and over again from people who, are courageous enough to integrate this part. I'll say one more thing and then I'll be quiet, but like, everybody's afraid that if they face these parts, they'll become these parts. The shadow is way more dangerous if it's unconscious. Then it takes over occasionally, right? It leaks out. So it's more dangerous to not have a relationship with the parts, because again, then shadows won't just be silent passengers for life. It doesn't work that way. There are parts of us that are real that want to be found and integrated and loved and paid attention to. And so to get our attention, they take over occasionally. And then we scream at somebody in traffic or yell at our kid or binge. I mean, evil shadows have really interesting, takeovers to compensate for the relationship they're not getting, the attention they're not getting. When we pay attention to them, they give us information about things like, oh, I'm really jealous of this person. I don't have to act jealous. That jealousy is information about what, I'm not really satisfying in myself. So they end up expanding our clarity, our courage, our energy, and they don't lead our lives. They just become really essential kind of traveling companions.
Yeah, it's so fascinating to me. And I love how you said it's about wholeness, I think is what I heard you say, about wholeness or becoming whole when we integrate our shadow. And this is so much about the work that I do. Some people know that I do a lot of work around the freedom transmissions. and I work with people on the freedom transmissions. And it was interesting because I was going over it recently, and it was talking about the shadow, but in different terms, just like it can tend to do. And one of the ways because what we talk about in the freedom transmissions is returning to wholeness. Our journey here in this life is about returning to wholeness. And what does that mean? It means embracing our human and our divine selves together. And in order to have this wholeness, we are encouraged to embrace our shadow, or what is called in the book, our lost little lambs. Our lost little lambs are just, they're out in the field, and they've been, left alone. Maybe it's like a three-legged, one-eyed lamb that has sort of been discarded, and that we're invited to bring it back into the flock to integrate. And I just I love that I keep hearing the messages that's being encouraged to not fear the shadow, our shadow selves, what some people might even call like our Lucifer selves, our evil shadow. Because when you think of the word evil shadow, it's like, oh my God. Yet to perhaps like take the charge out of it a little bit, and it's the returning to wholeness. And as you've said, it's the blueprint to, what did you say? It's our blueprint to what?
Like our most expansive self, who we could be, and could have been before we stuffed down and buried those parts. So it's never too late. It's never too.
What have you said to us about the shadow being a bouncer?
Oh, yeah. Well, what I realized again, and I've been really privileged to hold space for people doing this very specific work for now thousands of hours. And so what I can report from the trenches is that, you can't really get access to all of the intelligence of the unconscious. So I should back up or zoom out and say, I think, what people have different ways for describing, but we're all talking about the same thing, is that light, that part of our intelligence that comes to us through instinct, insight, intuition, inspiration. Rick Rubin writes about it. Elizabeth Gilbert writes about it. All of us have our entry points, but the Einstein talked about it brilliantly. Like the part of us that is visionary and not just bound by logic and reason is in the unconscious. It comes from the non-material, not the left brain, really the right lobe of the brain. It's a little bit of a reduction, but generally speaking, that's where the unconscious is. And it's all, again, the instinct. It's the dimension of our intelligence that isn't just, again, rational and logical and analytical. It's picking up on patterns, felt senses, relationship. It's like the, I think of, sorry, this is total random, but like my octopus teacher, right? How the octopus knows, like we have side of us, that's in our unconscious. And people who have a way to get in touch with it are visionaries. Back to the shadow. If you don't get to know your shadow's blocking your access to that mode of your own intelligence. So, for me, my mission in life is it's really not that hard to do this work. And it's so redeeming. It's like a homecoming. If you just, and again, like I love hosting space and community to make it appealing, but also like just not that awful. Like our shadows, one thing I say all the time is like the shadow is not interested in holding grudges. It's not like, great, so you've been living our whole life without me, and now I'm going to like make you suffer. Like shadows aren't, that's not how it works. Like Carl Jung, who really is the father of shadow work, always talked about the self wants wholeness and health. We're like plants that grow towards the light. As soon as the shadow, my image for the shadow is always, it's a little plant in a basement that has been blocked off. That's the unconscious. No light is getting in. It's boarded and it's dark. And the plant is the shadow in the basement, the cellar of us in our unconscious. And we cast it down there. We didn't realize we were doing it. We just did it to survive. And as soon as you're given away, none of us knows this. I wasn't taught this in school. Like, I didn't know I could just go. I mean, I think that's why we love fairy tales. All of us are Harry Potter. All of us have the scar. All of us, that's what fairy tales are about, right? We want to get back to that enchanted space inside of us, and the shadow holds the keys. So as soon as we have a way to real and are taught, and my work isn't the only way to get to that part, there's plenty of ways, I just have a way, but that is efficient and intuitive. But as soon as you find that little plant, it bends towards the light, like it just wanted that attention. And so, my work is about giving people a process, and it feels good. I think that's like, it just feels like a homecoming. It just isn't as awful as we fear it's going to be.
Yeah, that's what I love about how you present it. Just hearing you talk about that, everything you've just said, it presents it in such a way that it feels very exciting and accessible to work with the shadow. And so that's what I love that we're going to do together this Thursday. Anybody who's on right now or listening back, I highly recommend. I'm telling everyone, I'm like, I'm talking to a lot of ladies in my community, and I'm just like, ladies, this is the work. This is the work. And what I love that we're going to do is we're going to do a 90-minute workshop, super easy, this Thursday, May 14th, 5 p.m. PST. And we're going to chat a little bit about the shadow, and then you are going to walk us through an exercise similar to what I was just sharing about, if I'm correct, where we're going to meet either our evil or inferior shadow.
Yep.
Yep. Okay. And I love that. And then also what's great is that for people who want to can chat with you a little bit about, like, this is what came up for me, where you can help people sort of work through it a little bit. And then also what is super important are takeaways on how we can move forward from this workshop on how to actually be in relationship with the shadow. Can you give just one example of one thing that is helpful for people as we move on? Because we're not just going to leave people like, great, you met your shadow, goodbye.
Yeah.
We're going to give some takeaways.
Definitely. I mean, I think the thing that, that really keeps me employed, if I'm being completely honest, but, and is why I do monthly support groups, is that it's actually quite simple work, but it's neural pathways that they're not habits. So to like share our consciousness with another part of us that is real. Number one, that's like a mind warp for most people. Like, your shadow isn't just like some figment. It's a real being with its own consciousness and storyline. I think art is kind of like really reflecting that idea, these like everything all at once, like timelines, where our consciousness in 2026 is really, it's probably always been there, but I'm clued into it, like keyed into it. We're on multiple timelines. We're not just our ego self, right? Our ego self is like our identity, how we think of ourselves. I'm the mom of, it's Mother's Day, I'm the mom of 2 kids, I am 53, I've had this life, I'm divorced, I'm right. Like, I have a point of view and an identity, and it's how I think of myself. And I'm mostly, again, like, I'm that Kristan. And I'll always be that Kristan, but that's not the only Kristan. And that's like, takes some getting used to for people, this idea. And the work that shadow work is really helps you animate, breathe life into parts of you that are real and have intelligence, consciousness, point of view. When I work with, maybe a concrete example of that is like, I'm thinking of, the creatives. I work with a lot of creatives. I work with directors, the storyteller self. The part of my creative clients that knows how to tell a story that translates across all of humanity comes from the inferior shadow. You can't tell a deeply human story if you're not in touch with the part of you that was injured. We all have that. That's what great storytelling is. Most people, I don't know if that's fair to say, but lots of people, how the Greeks talked about catharsis. Most people aren't in touch with it inside of them, so they go to the movies or they read books to be able to feel that, get access to that. But we all carry that. So what is my point? My point is that keeping it alive is the hardest part of shadow work. It's all easy. It's all intuitive. It's way easier than we fear, and make it out to be. So the takeaway you're asking for is all you have to do as the ego is to want it, want a relationship with it, which most of us day one are like, hell no. Relationship with my whore, my angry self, my whatever I buried, right? My like non-people pleaser. I don't like, keep me away from her. That's where most people start, if we're being totally honest. We don't love that part of ourselves day one. Even if we get it, when you really encounter it, it's like you've been burying a part of yourself for a long time. So I always say to people, like, the more repulsive that figure is initially, like, you're probably really onto something that belongs to you. And that is going to expand you. Again, that's what I'm here for, is to promise you from so many data points, if you just can stay long enough. So what we control is wanting a relationship with it and then keeping it alive. And that's the hardest part. So like, here's one idea. Here's little Kristan, little inferior shadow Kristan. Like I have pictures, I have reference points. We have to pay attention. What a great phrase. Pay attention. Attention is generative, and our job is to keep the channel open to these parts that are as real as we are, our ego self. And if we show up and just simply remember our shadow every day, even if you don't I'll give you more ways to stay in touch with your shadow and keep it alive, but I want to make it really clear. Just holding a visual of the Victorian lady with think of the brilliance of that image. The unconscious, I'm always like, doesn't make mistakes, and a picture tells 1,000 stories. Like if you just meditated on that for 30 seconds and just held space for her, the rest takes care of itself. That part then starts to speak because it experiences being wanted, attended to, and it will start to, like, whatever we pay attention to, we find and we grow. So like she'll start talking to you, and the talking might be like, you see a movie with your husband tonight and you're like, oh my God, that's my shadow in art. And you wouldn't have seen it. You would have watched it and would have been like, oh, that was a great movie. But like, because you're working, because this morning for 30 seconds, you like made space for, I have this really like intensely powerful part of me who's angry, but she isn't really angry. Let me just be with her. Like, that's all our part is, our job. That's all we have to do. She'll start coming out of the woodwork, and you'll see something maybe in a movie tonight, or maybe it'll strike you as an insight, but you'll start getting access to ideas, inspiration, insight, communication from your unconscious that you wouldn't have gotten had you not remembered her. So it can be that simple. The magic is like, it works itself. Like it honestly, and again, that's where I can say I feel confident in claiming expert status because I've walked so many people through it. Like I'm just giving people a way to get in touch with buried gold inside of them through these parts that are the bouncers to the fullest expression of our light, of our purpose here, of what we can contribute. And that's the kind of, like, whoa, the big reveal, or like the counterintuitive part of it is like, no, through the dark comes the light. And it's not the only way the light comes, but it's a big part of us fully being able to express and access our light. So that I'll end on saying, I have this thing that I say, which is like, if we allow it, like the phenomenon of how this works. And again, you asked me, what's the takeaway? Just remember your shadow. That's it. That's all you have to do, is admit that you share your consciousness with this part. And then, when we do our thing, there are questions you can ask your shadow. There's more specific kind of ways to communicate, but it's all just building a relationship. We all know how to do this. The thing that will change, the thing that changes is that you realize you have other parts of you, and then you want to relate to it. That's what your kind of big aha was, like, oh no, I want this. I'm going to gain. It isn't as awful as I thought, and I'm going to be more of myself. So we control the want and the will. That's what I say. The shadow does the rest. So if we allow it, our shadow will orchestrate pathways and possibilities, literally, legit. Like, again, I'm writing a book. I have so many stories about like stuff that defies logic and reason that people are able to accomplish. Again, I think the broader culture or whatever our world might call it manifesting, right? It's like, I don't really think of it as that. I have a different angle on it, which is if we allow it, our shadow will orchestrate pathways and possibilities, synergies, right place, right time, manifesting that we cannot perceive, let alone achieve with our ego self alone. So that's the stakes.
It's so good, Kristan. It's so good. And I imagine everyone listening is feeling inspiration from this, or I hope you guys are, because, a lot of us and a lot of people in my community, in the Hold the Light community, there's a lot of focus on meditation and connecting with the divine and, looking for signs and synchronicities. And this is just another version of connection. And I just love that there are parts of us that are just like asking for a seat at the table. I'm trying to raise my hand. They're just like, look at me, bring me in, coach, because we can bring this, we can like have a championship game here if you take me off the bench and bring me into the game.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. So yes, we welcome the light. And for many of us, it's so easy to be like, I welcome the light. Not everybody though, too. I want to respect that, but to also say, let's Shadow's a team member, and we're not going to win the game of the series of our life unless we bring the whole team together. So I am so lit up by you and what you share and how you show up. And I encourage everyone to join us this Thursday, May 14th, 5 p.m. PST. It is 90 minutes. It's just like, guys, this is an easy lift, and we're going to go in it together. You're going to bring us in it, and then we will leave on a new path. There's a new path. There's a new relationship that we are welcoming everyone to join in on. So I think that we've done our Mother's Day chat, welcoming people in. I adore you.
I adore you, and thank you for inviting me. It's just so much fun to get to, talk to you and create with you. And thanks for inviting me into your community and bringing all the, beauty and light that you bring. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristan. Okay, we're going to pop off to everyone who's on now. We'll share this later, and we'll, if anyone is not yet joining us but wants to, it's in my Substack. You guys are here on Substack, so we're sharing the information everywhere. But you can reach out to me or to Kristan, and on Substack, just reach out to us. Right, Kristan?
Yes. Thank you, okay. Laurie.
Okay, girl. Happy Mother's Day. Goodbye, everyone. See you later. Mwah.